Good afternoon and welcome to all. Today is Monday, July 8th, 2024. This is our afternoon land use hearing. I'll call this meeting to order at 3 p.m. As is our tradition, we shall begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your participation. My name is John Kafalis, a commissioner from District 1, the 2024 chair of the Board of County Commissioners, joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Stevens from District 2, Jody Shattuck McNally from District 3. Up above here is Heather with the Clerk and Recorder's Office. She takes notes, records the meeting. It's a public meeting, of course. She does a wonderful job. And across the way, we have Christina with the County Attorney's Office and various other folks from Community Development. So the way this will work is, in a moment, I'll turn it over to Jenny. She can introduce her folks, say a word or two about procedure, process, and then I will go through a list of the items that are listed on our agenda, our land use hearing agenda. There are 3 consent items and there are 2 discussion items, and we'll explain that more in a moment. So with that, I think I've covered my bases. Jenny, would you take it from here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jenny Axmaker. I am the planning manager. I'm joined at the dais by one of our planners, Justin Curry, another planner, Laura Culleton. We have our admin assistant here, Christina Scrutchins. And then we're also joined with, from the engineering office, David Pringle, our principal planner, Cassidy Fior, and we're joined online by a representative from our health department, Leah Schneider. So with that, we respectfully request that all members of the audience silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and hearing procedure instructions, which are located on the wall right here. If you're joining us online, you can find that agenda on our website, larimer.org/BOCC/commissioners-meetings. Please wait to speak until you are recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive and/or negative. Please make all comments to the Board of County Commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone available as needed. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide the spelling of your name if it's unique. Please speak directly into the microphone so that remote participants may hear you. Upon request, assisted listening devices are available for the hearing impaired. For those of you on Zoom, attendees will be muted until they are recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or requests that a consent item be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 if you're using a telephone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. So now I'd like to go through the list of items that are on our agenda today, and then talk about consent items and how we will handle that. The first item that is listed, it's a discussion item. It's a tabled item, for, I believe, from the May 20th date. This is the Russell short-term rental, file number 22-zone 3397. That is the first discussion item. Then we have 3 consent items. The first is University of Denver appeal, file number 24-GNRL 0552. The second consent item is a Fellows lot consolidation and easement vacation, file number 24-LAND 4422. The third consent item is, pardon me, I apologize. My apologies. The third consent item is the Van Blaricombe, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that properly, Van Blaricombe appeal, file number 24-zone 3631. And then the today's public hearing discussion item that is not a tabled item is the Cecil sign appeals, file number 24-GNRL 0553. So the way we'll do this, folks, is we will First, consider the three consent agenda items. And just for your information, if you're not aware, consent agenda items are land use items that, as far as we know, there's not any controversy. It's mostly administrative, handled at the administrative community development level. And so unless a commissioner removes something from the consent agenda, or perhaps somebody from the audience wishes to remove something from the consent agenda, then those items are voted on en masse, and there's not a discussion, there's not a staff presentation, there's not public comment. So we'll handle those three items first, and then we'll go to the tabled item, which is the short-term rental application, the Russell short-term rental application, and then we'll go to that final item, which is the Cecil sign appeal item, and maybe some folks are here for that one. So with that, I will ask my colleagues, do you wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Commissioner Stevens?
I don't wish to remove something, but we received a memo that looks like
Thank
the
you.
Van Blaricum ALA size appeal has some additional conditions of approval. Is that correct? And how do we need to address that?
Yeah,
That is correct, and that was from Cassidy Fior, and she can answer any questions you have about that memo.
Okay.
thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, my question would just be, do we need to include those additional conditions in the motion, or those have already been included, and so we would just make the motion as normal?
Thank you. Cassidy, you want to respond to that, or perhaps somebody from the attorney's office?
Yeah, I think I might defer that to Frank from the attorney's office with Christine.
Could you make sure you speak into the mic?
Yes, sorry.
That helps. Thank you.
If I could defer that to Christine from the county attorney's office.
This is Christine Luckison with the County Attorney's Office. It can stay on consent. When you make the motion, you can just say it's with the updated conditions.
Okay, very good. Thank you for pointing that out. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, anything you want to pull off the agenda? Okay, so before we move forward, I want to give an opportunity to folks in the audience in person. Are those three items that we mentioned, with the understanding that the accessory living area proposal has some additional conditions of approval? Is there anyone who wishes to remove any of those three items off of the consent agenda? Jenny, or could you check online to see if anybody wishes to do that?
If you're joining us online, please use the raise your hand function or *9 if you wish to pull an item from the consent agenda. We have no hands raised.
Thank you, Jenny. Then we'll proceed. At this time, I will ask, let's see, Commissioner Stevens, would you offer the motion to approve the three consent agenda items with the understanding of the additional conditions of approval for the third item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the three items on the consent agenda, subject to the conditions in the staff reports, and acknowledging that there have been updated conditions to the third item, the Van Blaricum appeal. And further move to authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe that is a proper motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, that was easy. We got through three things pretty quick. We'll now move on to the, yes, Commissioner.
Not to disrupt the flow of the hearing, but there's this feedback, and I'm not sure if do you
yes.
hear it too, and it's kind of echoing. And
We do. We think it may be related to the TVs up there, and so we're trying to troubleshoot it. Would you like us to take a quick pause to see if we can fix
it's
it?
up to the chair, but also I didn't know maybe if we turned off the speaker at the podium for a minute, maybe that's feedback too. I don't know. It's just starting to echo and kind of a distraction, and not to be interruptive, Mr. Chair, but it's just starting to be more noticeable to me. Thank you.
I didn't even notice that, so thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I have a remote for that TV.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are we good?
Let's give it just a second.
Thank you all for your patience. As I get older, I believe it's appropriate in our hectic days to have a moment to pause now and then.
Okay, let's see if that's any better.
Is that any better?
Yep.
It appears that that is better.
Okay,
Therefore,
terrific.
we will proceed. At this time, we will look at the Russell short-term rental file number 22-zone 3397. I will ask, and thank you all for your presence. Have a great afternoon. We'll ask Laura from our planning department to offer the staff presentation. And again, the staff presentation, then the applicants will have an opportunity, and then we'll open it up for public comment, response to the public comment, and then along the way, we can ask questions of the commissioners, and then we will ultimately deliberate and do the best we can to make an informed decision on this proposal. Laura, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Culleton. I am the planner working on this case, the Russell short-term rental, file number 22 zone 3397. The subject property is located at 3919 Joni Lane in Loveland, which is just northwest of the intersection of South Taft Avenue and West County Road 14 in the Longs Peak Estates subdivision. The applicants are requesting administrative special review for a 4-bedroom plus 1 additional sleeping area, 10-guest short-term rental in an existing single-family home. The applicants are Deborah and James Russell. The current zone district of the property is RR2, which is rural residential. The lot size is about half an acre, and the property is serviced by the Little Thompson Water District, Berthoud Sanitation, and Loveland Fire Rescue Authority. And the property also takes access off of Joni Lane. So, per the Larimer County Land Use Code, a short-term rental is defined as a dwelling rented to transient guests for short-term lodging when not occupied by the owner/renter. An STR use is classified as commercial lodging facilities use and is permitted in the RR2 zone district following administrative special review. And I also wanted to note this application was submitted in December of 2022, and it went through the building life safety process first before beginning the planning process earlier this year. And for that reason, this application is being reviewed under the previous short-term rental regulations. Neighbor notification was sent out. We sent 48 postcards to neighbors within 500 feet of the property and those within the Longs Peak Estates subdivision. We received written comments from 12 community members in opposition of the proposed short-term rental, and we also received one comment from someone in support of the proposal. And these are included as Attachment E. The applicant has also provided a response to these comments, which is included as Attachment F to the packet. We did send out this project for referral agency comments, and they noted no concerns with the proposal, and all the applicable comments have been addressed if there were any. I also wanted to add that they did pass the life safety inspection with the building division earlier, I believe, sometime late last year. And then this is the general review criteria that the director should consider when reviewing a short-term rental. I can go back to this if needed. And then we also have the standards for short-term rentals with 10 or fewer occupants, which I can come back to if we need to look at that. So the administrative special review process authorizes the director to approve applications if all criteria is met and there's no substantive issues. The director did elevate this one to the Board of County Commissioners just due to the amount of neighbor comments that were provided on this proposal. Staff has found that the proposed application for the Russell short-term rental meets all the criteria in section 335B2 and meets 3 of the 5 criteria in section 6.4.3D. Staff does not have a conclusive determination on criteria 1 and 2 of section 643D. Therefore, the Development Services team is not making a specific recommendation on this application and has presented all of the information by which the Board of County Commissioners may base their deliberation and decision. And then I have two suggested motions for you. The first is a motion of denial, and then the second is a motion for approval with 13 added conditions, which are also in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I can flip back to any slides.
Thank you very much, Laura. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments for Laura Culleton, our planner? Commissioner Stevens?
Not right now, thank you.
I have a question, if I may, regarding one of the referral agency letters, this one from the building official. There were some matters, some issues brought up by code compliance and the building folks regarding some structures that perhaps weren't properly permitted when they were built. What's the status of that, please? And there was an additional bedroom and all of that.
Yes, I believe they did go through the as-built permitting process to make that a legal bedroom, and they did pass the building life safety inspection. When we start a short-term rental application, we get initial comments from building and code compliance, so those were provided right at the beginning, but the applicant has since resolved all those issues.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, then I believe we can move on to the applicant. The applicant has an opportunity to come forward and present the application. Are those folks here? Jim and, are they here? Come on up, folks. And if you would be kind enough to identify yourselves for the record, spell your name perhaps, and also how much time do you think you need as far as your presentation? 10 minutes, less?
Less.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
long. My name's Jim Russell.
Jim Russell.
And
I'm Deborah Russell.
Russell, thank you.
we just feel that we've passed all of the county requirements, life safety and the fire mitigation 1-2, and the permit for that bedroom. In fact, Jim Johnson came out and did the electrical inspection, and everything is in order. And we just feel that it's a good location and property for this type of short-term rental. It's easy access off Taft Avenue. It's about the second property into the neighborhood, so there wouldn't be a lot of traffic through the neighborhood. And plenty of off-street parking, and just seems like a suitable location.
And also the way the property is located, on one side is a school field, which is about the size of a football field. So it's that much space between us and the school. The playground for the school that is on the very far corner opposite of us, they don't come into that area. When they do, they're with a teacher or a coach. When it in front of the house, it's 2 side yards. There's no house directly across the street. And behind us, it's probably about 100 feet to that house. And they wrote a letter. They agree that with us doing this. The other property to the north of us, it's about 1/4 of an acre in between us, with our garages on the same side and storage sheds on the side. Just for the most part, this type of thing would be mostly on weekends when school isn't, happening, or summer. And, so it's not like it would conflict with any of that. There is a lot of traffic that goes by for the school. So we have that already. And it's, there's a sidewalk that goes along the inside of that field. And there's, constant foot traffic there and foot traffic in front of the house. I mean, and so it's not, the house sits way back. It angles towards the school and away from the house to the north. So mostly if people are there, they're going to be in the backyard, and it's pretty well secluded there with, like I said, open field on one side, and the people behind are fine. And then, but we went through this process because we wanted to do it the right way, and we wanted to get registered and make sure everything was being done right. We noticed that in the covenants when we started, we did not see anything about short-term rental in it. And the Colorado Supreme Court says that unless it's specifically in the covenants, that they can't, say you can't do it. So anyways, that's basically why we move forward with it. And it's, we're trying to supplement income, and we're good. We want to retire one of these days. We're right there at 70. And so, it's, we just thought that would be a way, and it's not that it would be full all the time. There wouldn't be someone there all the time. And, it's it's a cleaner type of rental, because one, you have to keep it up to have ratings, and people won't come there if you get bad ratings on how it's clean or the property's being taken care of. We felt that way we could stay more in control of the property, that we could be there to watch over it. We're only like 15 minutes away. And, to also we would, get property management and, the yard and house cleaners. But, we just felt like that was the cleaner option, that people that come to use it aren't there 24/7. They're off, either at a funeral or a wedding or a conference, or they're off into the mountains, and so they're just there usually just to sleep and cook breakfast, and and we wanted it also for people that could, when their house is burned and there's a flood and something like that, that there's a place they can go that has all the furniture and everything in it, that they can stay instead of just stay in a hotel. So, I mean, there's just different options, but we also know that, if things also don't work out, we're very willing to stop at any moment. It's that type of thing you can do, because you're not so tied into a lease with someone that you can't get out of it. And so we're just, anyway, we're not trying to cause any problems, and we want peace, and we want a safe type situation, and we want to have, we don't want parties and all that kind of stuff either. And but anyway, that was just basically everything. I think I can.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Jim and Deborah. Colleagues, but do you have any questions for these folks at this point?
I can't hear.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, for coming today and presenting on this. I believe, Mr. Russell, you had mentioned about there was plenty off-street parking, but do you understand that that is a condition of approval? If this is approved, that there is no off-site parking, it has to be in the driveway, it cannot be in the right-of-way? So it can't be off street. It has to be in the driveway. That's
Yeah.
a condition of approval. I don't know if you understood that.
Yeah, it's got a pretty long driveway and a big gravel area next to it. You could probably actually have 10 or 12 vehicles parked off the street, but not that there would ever probably be over one or two. But
Yeah. And also we can state how many cars we can say they can only have one, or they can have two or three, so that part we will try to control and not have a lot of cars at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does that answer your question? Yeah, because indeed one of the conditions of approval makes it clear that any parking, there have to be a certain number of spaces available on site and nothing in the right of way. But you folks understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so let me offer a question before we go to public comment. And my question is, I understand that your interpretation of the HOA covenant was such that it didn't expressly prohibit short-term rentals, and I'm sure there'll be conversation about that. But I'm wondering what kind of communication or outreach have you all done with your neighbors to try to, talk about this and see if there's some common ground that could be found with this?
On some of this, we were just trying to lie low for a while to see if we passed the inspections and stuff. And because we thought, why bring anything up if we're not going to make it through that? And so then when it did get sent out, immediately someone had posted it on Facebook neighborhood thing, and it went into an explosion real fast. And then I tried to communicate a little bit on there, and then I realized that, I needed to really, it just, like I said, it turned into a fireball, and things were getting passed around that are not the truth.
Okay.
And so we talked to the neighbor behind us, but that's as far as it got, because like I said, it was so suddenly now you're on defense, and you didn't get a chance to share what was happening.
the letter you sent.
Oh, and I did send a letter, but that was after I got the comments from the neighbors.
Okay.
And sent it out because I knew that so many issues they didn't have right, and and they didn't understand a lot of the rules for short-term rental, the rules for the county, the just even about even some of the state laws that have come in, and so I was trying to get that out there so they understood why we were doing, and we weren't trying to go against anyone, and we weren't trying to step ahead and not have a meeting and not talk to them first. Just the way it lined up, it was, we didn't see the need at first, so.
And Debbie's been involved with that property since 1988, so she's very much aware of the dynamics of that neighborhood and the school her kids went through, and I've been paying HOA dues since 1988.
Okay, thank you. And one last comment. I think it's in your applicant response to community comments, you indicate that the house has been vacant for the last 5 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it says since December of 2019,
yeah.
4.5 years, I suppose.
During that, we had a renter in there we had to evict, and it took us 6 months. And then COVID came.
Yes, COVID.
And then everything started getting shut down, and we got sick. And, so there was some different things like that. We started working on it and trying to prepare it. And at that time, we didn't know what we were going to do at that time. And then it was July of 21. We tried to start, and we missed the deadline, and they made us start over. And so we paid again. And then we thought, well, this time we'll start with the inspections just because we don't want to get this far into it. And then we can't afford to fix something that they want us to fix. And so we just, that's kind of how it came about.
Great. Thank you. And last comment, and that is, in a moment, we'll open it up for public comment. And I just want to make sure you really should listen to that carefully, because you will have an opportunity to respond to the comments that folks make. So thank you all very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, so now we move into the public comment phase. And I'm wondering, by a show of hands, I see a few folks in the audience, how many folks wish to offer public comment who are here? 5 people. Okay. Well, yes, I
Will the people who are looking online,
I can't hear.
will the people who are looking online have the opportunity?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That might be-
So, given that there are 5 people here, and it looks like, or it sounds like there are folks online, I will ask people to keep their comments, their individual comments, to not exceed 3 minutes. If you need 3 minutes, just to be reasonable about that. So you'll have up to 3 minutes to offer your public comment, and we'll begin. Who would like to go first? We'll start with the in-person folks, and we'll go to the online folks. Come on down. We're generally a friendly group, and if you would be kind enough to give us your name and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Joseph Malberg, Joe. I've been in the neighborhood since 1984.
1984.
Let's see.
Yeah, please. Oh, yes,
I'm
please.
trying to think. I'll go ahead and give you my points here, if that's okay.
Of course.
Since 1984, it's been a neighborhood that's been single-family dwellings, and even though there are half-acre and a few three-quarter-acre lots, there's really not a lot of space for off-site parking. Parking with each house. If you visit the location, I would challenge people to say that, unless the vehicles can't get in and out, unless you pull all of them out to get the last one. So the neighborhood is designed for single-family dwellings. There's no sidewalk for the traffic, for the foot traffic, for the kids. Lots of kids, lots of traffic with people's personal vehicles, but not much for residents. Although residents do take advantage in off-school hours to walk around the block. There is a school in the neighborhood, several hundred kids. We're concerned about their well-being. And when you bring some development in that's got designation for short-term occupancy, we have to consider that, and we're not sure that that's best. This is a good place for that kind of this kind of a development. The property hasn't been well maintained for the last 5 years, and we talk about 10 occupancies. Well, how many people is that really? Is it just 10 people? And how many vehicles do 10 people have? It seems to me like it could be quite a few more required for that. The homeowners association wasn't contacted. That would have been a good place to start this dialogue, but the people went directly to the county, and many of us were surprised by this request for changing the atmosphere in the neighborhood. We've seen a letter of response from one of the applicants, which was honestly off base. Anyone who really lives in the neighborhood knows it's not an accurate reflection of what's in the neighborhood. And my 3 minutes are probably up. It's just, we've got a neighborhood that's been a nice, quiet place with single-family dwellings ever since 1984. And now we're talking about bringing multi-party occupancies in, and we're thinking that that's a danger to the school and changes the neighborhood drastically.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Yes. Who would like to go next, please? Welcome. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Adrian M. Martinez, and I live at 3907 Joni Lane in Loveland, Colorado, and this is a house directly north of Jim and Russell's rental. I've known Jim and Debbie for, well, I guess almost as long as we've lived in Loveland there for almost 40 years, and I know her mom and dad all this time. So I just want to let Jim and Debbie know I have nothing personal against them for what they're trying to do, but I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 40 years, and it's been, like Joe said, it's been a peaceful neighborhood. We've never really had much problems there. And I think that's just the way I personally would like to keep it. One of my concerns was that we never had Jim or Debbie come to any HOA meeting to advise us of what they wanted to do or were trying to do. So that was another issue the HOA had. And I would just like to keep it the way it is. Otherwise, if we're going to let one family start a short-term rental, then who's not to know that the next family's going to do it, and the next thing we know, we're going to have a whole neighborhood of short-term rentals. And I would just like to ask Debbie and Jim, I mean, if like I said, I live right next to the house that they want to make a short-term rental, but I mean, how would they feel if somebody went and bought the houses? Jim and Debbie live in a nice neighborhood here in Loveland, and I don't know if they'd want somebody to come by and have a short-term rental next to them. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner, can you help them spell their names?
I can't hear you.
Can you help them spell their names for me?
Yeah. Is it, sir, your name is Adrian Martinez?
Yes, sir.
Martinez?
Correct.
I'm Louise Martinez, Adrian's wife.
What's your first name? What's your first name?
Louise, Louise.
Thank you, Louise.
Okay. The concern, as a lot of the neighbors is, we want to keep it as a small community as we currently have it. We've spoken to Debbie and Jim while they were fixing up the house. We asked them what they were doing. They go, we're just renovating. They never let us know, not that they had to, but indicate that they had wanted to use the house as a short-term rental. Once we got the notice from the county that was their intent, it doesn't sit well with me personally, being that we live next door. Yes, we do have a lot of traffic from the school during the season, the school. But that's understandable. Anybody who moved in the neighborhood, I'm sure, drove by and checked out to see what the neighborhood was like, knew the school was there, and it's going to continue to be there. So to add traffic and unknown individuals coming in and out of this short-term rental that they're proposing to have, it's easier to know your neighbors and get along with their neighbors, but to have strangers coming in and out at whatever interval just doesn't sit well. And I've heard where there have been short-term rentals and incidences happen, some not good. So I'm basically against all of this to keep it as a neighborhood as we have it. there is another one or two individuals in the neighborhood that would like to possibly do a short-term rental. As my husband stated, let's keep it a subdivision and not a rental area. That's it.
Is that all, Louise?
Yes,
Thank you kindly.
you're welcome.
Come on up, folks. I think you've figured out the routine by now.
Yep.
Welcome.
My name is David Barber, B-A-R-B-E-R, and this is my wife Karen. We live at 3919 Lissa Drive in the Longs Peak Estates. We're newcomers. We purchased our home just over 3 years ago. And since that time, we have come to appreciate and be thankful for our neighbors and the sense of community that exists in the neighborhood. And even though there is a diversity of thought and political affiliation, that sense of neighborliness and care is especially important in this time of so many divisions and polarization in our country. Those who occupy a short-term rental will not enhance our sense of community and concern for each other. They will not add or contribute to the well-being of the neighborhood or participate in the HOA. Guests in a short-term rental are simply users, and they do not give back to the community. Even though the covenants for Longs Peak Estates at this time do not state specifically that short-term rentals are prohibited, the intent of our existing covenants implies that this subdivision is to be occupied by single-family residences, not short-term rentals. It is also very apparent that the overwhelming majority of residents and homeowners feel this way, since our recent petition objecting to the approval of a short-term rental was signed by the majority of residents. This petition and numerous emails sent to the planning department summarized many potential problems with the short-term rental. I will not duplicate what you already know, since they are included in the public record, and you have read the many documents asking you to not to deny this request. If there was a benefit to the wider community, such as affordable housing, or if discrimination was involved, we would have a different opinion. For instance, we are willing to overlook the traffic and other inconveniences of Carey Martin School because of the great value of a neighborhood school and its significant contribution to our children and our society. Plus, the school predates us by many, many years. A short-term rental, however, which is new to our neighborhood, would be contrary to the nature and atmosphere of our subdivision and why most residents choose to live here. It does nothing to enhance our life together, and only the owners of the short-term rental reap the benefit. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Sharon, there's a little bit of, well, actually, it's 9 seconds, so I guess hopefully you've represented the sentiment of both of you. Thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you.
Well, let's now go online. Jenny, are there folks who are signed up online who wish to offer comment?
We do have folks signed up online, so we'll start with Cynthia. I will allow you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and then you'll be allowed 3 minutes. So Cynthia, you're up first.
Along with many of the things that have been said,
Cynthia, please state your name.
And spell your last name, please.
Cynthia Tiger, Tiger.
Okay.
I live at 4127 Lissa Drive, and along with what many people have already said, the neighborhood was not intended to have short-term rentals. I don't even know if that was a thing back when it was conceived. People who live here bought into the neighborhood as it is, not having a short-term rental. And I wonder how many, as people move and stuff, I wonder how many people would be attracted to this neighborhood having a short-term rental, especially if it gets approved and others are allowed in. I keep asking myself, would I buy into a neighborhood with short-term rental? Would you buy into a neighborhood with short-term rental? Houses are a major portion of people's assets, and what's going to happen to their assets, especially if they age. Is it going to decrease the value of our house? Debbie mentioned having housing for flood and burn families. That's fine, but that's not a short-term rental. When those things happen, people are living in places for a year or more until they can get their house done. And one thing that was mentioned in Debbie's letter was it's been in her family for a long time. It's like maybe it's time to let the house proceed with its intended use and sell it and have it go to a family who will occupy it, live in it, and fit in with the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you very much for taking the time. Who's next, Jenny?
All right, we have Anna Holmes-Koska. I apologize if I mispronounce anything. Anna will allow you to speak. You'll need to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes.
And please identify yourself and spell your last name.
Anna, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Anna, we still can't hear you. We'll come back to you. Let's go to our next person with a hand up. We'll go to Zachary Camerzel. Zachary, you'll have 3 minutes. Please make sure and introduce yourself. Zachary, you're cutting in and out.
Yes, my name is Zachary Camerzel.
Zachary, please spell your last name, sir.
Kamerzel.
Great, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. I live at 3918 Joni Lane. I am actually the property just across the street to the east of this particular property, of the Russell property. We are new residents to the neighborhood, and one of the things we were attracted to was the quiet single-family neighborhood. We like the atmosphere of the school right across the street. We like the neighborhood. We love the community. We also recently painted our house, and one of the first things that we did was went and talked to our neighbors about the paint colors. We even posted it on the community Facebook page asking for input to be great neighbors. One of the things that we were surprised about this short-term rental is the first notification we got was from the county. We were never, ever contacted by the owners. There was no conversations ever had. It was just sprung on us, and here we are in a hearing talking about this. Short-term rental is a very concerning thing. There's lots of articles, lots of studies on property values, devaluing the neighborhood, things like that. Airbnbs typically are for parties. They're not really suitable for preschool and kindergarten. Right next to the school, there's going to be a lot of noise, party, alcohol use. There could be people throwing cans over the fence right into the preschool grounds. Kids are often there actually unsupervised. There's all kinds of kids. They run around. They're 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders, kindergartners. They run around that whole field. There are adults in the field, but they're not sitting there watching the whole time. So they're sitting there unsupervised, playing, enjoying themselves in an elementary school as they should be. There's also no parking off street. The only time you're parking off street is when you're parking in the ditch. There is no off-street parking, so there's either driveway or nothing. There's lots of school traffic, lots of kids walking in the neighborhood, but otherwise it's a pretty quiet neighborhood. I would also like to address the tone of the letter that was written by the Russells. I read that letter and it was honestly very hostile and gives me a lot of concerns about this particular property. So instead of addressing concerns the residents had, they pretty much attacked their neighbors, which shows they're not really invested in this neighborhood. They're basically landlords who own multiple properties and they're seeking to exploit another one for their personal gain. They could easily sell this property, use that proceeds for retirement. This is probably a $500,000 property, if not even a little bit more. That would easily fund most people's retirement or quite a big part of it. So there's quite a few concerns we have about this particular property, and we move that this property be this permit be denied, please.
Are you done, Zachary?
I'm all done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks. You as well.
Thanks.
All right. Let's go back and see if Anna has her technology working. Anna?
Put your microphones on the fly.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Please make sure and spell your name for us and then proceed with your 3 minutes of comment.
Thank you so much for coming back to me. My name is Anna Holmes-Koska. It's A-N-N-A. Last name is Holmes-Koska. I am a resident of Long Peak Estates as well. I live at 3906 Joni Lane, which is directly across the street from the house we're talking about here today. As far as my own personal feelings, I'll just take a step back and first speak as a representative of our HOA board. I serve as the secretary, and I just want to echo some of the things that our other residents have said. Zach did a great job. David did a great job. Thank you, Cynthia. Just to reiterate, we've circulated a petition, which, as was mentioned, had a majority of residents sign and agree to. Mainly our concerns was, certainly traffic. And although the property is really close to the entrance of the neighborhood, it is right at the entrance of the neighborhood, which is actually increases the traffic flow to that whole corner, which is certainly there's neighbors there too. So it's still a concern. The school proximity is also a concern with short-term rentals. I think other residents have noted that short-term residents would not be invested in or a contributing member of that community. There may not be a sense of concern or protection for children interacting or that. And again, like Zach was saying, there's always kids in the field during recess. There's not a teacher always right present with them. It's a big field, but there is a walkway entirely around it. It butts up right against that backyard property. So it's still a concern. The yard has a chain link fence, so there's no privacy fence as well. Just little things that I could mention. The concern of disruption and extra noise, obviously short-term rentals, they're not necessarily in a work and home kind of situation. It's more of a vacation situation or traveling for certain events and things like that. So people are not on the same kind of regular schedule as the typical family might be, such as is represented in our community. So there's a lot of things about it that didn't sit well. Aside from my own personal feelings about it, as a representative of the HOA board, I'm just here to say that we wanted to represent the feelings of the community as a whole, even though, as it was mentioned, our covenants don't right now specifically prohibit that short-term rental, but the spirit of the covenants is such that it's supposed to be limited to single-family dwellings and not to small businesses, which this kind of falls into that small business category. Like we were saying, people that are displaced from their home due to fire or flood, they're typically looking for more than a week-long stay. So it doesn't really coincide. And again, I'd like to agree with Zach as far as the sentiments. The letter that was written supposedly in response to our community had a really elevated level of hostility, which it seemed really out of place. Thank you for the time, and just want to reiterate the feelings of the majority of the community members were to deny this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you as well. Jenny, anyone else?
We have 2 more hands raised, and just a reminder, if you wish to speak and you're participating on Zoom, use the raise hand function. So we'll go to Tom Dixon next. Tom, I will allow you to speak. You'll need to unmute and spell your name for us, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tom Dixon. Last name is Dickson. I live at 3906 Lissa Drive in the neighborhood, Longs Peak Estates. I'm impressed with my neighbors today. I appreciate the comments of the people that have spoken on behalf of the neighborhood before me, and I don't want to repeat what other people have said, so let me just make a couple of other points. When the neighbors found out about this short-term rental application, there was an immediate concern among the neighbors. It's a small neighborhood, 31 households, I think, and as this process went on and we talked about it, we decided to see what people thought about it around the neighborhood, and we had this. We walked around on a Saturday or Sunday, a group of us, and to see what people thought and to see if they wanted to sign a petition about this. And we ended up getting signatures from, I think, a total of something like 23 of the households. This was just done over like a Saturday morning. Not everybody was home. Not every household answered the door, but we still got signatures on this petition opposing this short-term rental application by more than 3/4 of the households in the community. There's a lot of concerns that I have that have already been expressed. One of the ones that hasn't been touched on as much is the impact this can have on crime in our neighborhood. We're a small neighborhood with we all know our neighbors. People walk around the neighborhood, say hello. We're all out doing our gardening and getting to know each other, and you don't have that with somebody who's there as a short-term renter. There are 2 studies that I know of that have been done, one of them in Boston and another study that looked at the impact of short-term rentals in Nashville, Portland, Oregon, and New Orleans. Both of those studies looked at what happens to crime rates, what happens to 911 calls is what they looked at. They looked at 911 calls that originate from neighborhoods after the introduction of a short-term rental into that neighborhood. And both of those studies, the one in Boston, I think, covered about an 8-year period. I'm not sure about the other study, but both of them found that there was an increase in property crime, an increase in disturbing the peace of 911 calls, even an increase in sex crimes, although it wasn't statistically significant, as a result of introducing a short-term rental into a neighborhood. We want to keep the neighborhood that we have, which is a neighborhood that's existed in the area for decades.
Tom, could you wrap up, please?
Yeah, and so I'm done. I want to echo the comments that have made by my neighbors who preceded me today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next up we have Trish Hooglin. Trish, I'll allow you to speak. You'll need to unmute, and please make sure and spell your last name for us.
Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Trish Hoagland, Trish, last name is Hoogland. And like many of my neighbors, I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 plus years, and I've seen long-term rentals in the neighborhood as well throughout the years where the properties were not kept up at all. People having a hard time getting these folks out, tons of cars. So I don't really know that a long-term rental is any better of a solution than a short-term rental. I personally think short-term rentals are a better way to go. I think it's kind of the wave of the future. And in some cases, I live directly behind Debbie and Jim, so I don't have an issue with the way the yard's been kept up, and I think we would honestly be affected probably more than most. You know, if people are coming here short term on vacation, they're going to be on the deck out back. And we have a property out in Missouri that, you know, we do a short term rental there. We don't have issues with our neighbors. You know, if anything happens, they call us, we take care of it. We have a property management company. So while I do see both sides of it, I guess I'm just asking everybody to realize too that, you know, and there were issues there when it was a long-term rental. I had a hard time getting those folks out. The place was a mess. I think they had a grill, you know, underneath the deck, started the house kind of on fire, or not on fire, but, you know, there was some issues there. And I think for them wanting to just be able to make some extra money in their retirement, you know, albeit my sister came out here 2 years ago. They rented an Airbnb when they came out for a wedding. You know, I think if people are coming to have parties, they're not coming to Loveland in a residential neighborhood. They're going to go to Fort Collins or they're going to go to Denver. I think some of the concerns that maybe some of the folks have are maybe a little unfounded for the type of folks that I think they're going to get. And they can also set up stipulations with Airbnb or VRBO, whoever they choose to use. So I guess I just ask that everybody kind of look at both sides of it, you know, and moving forward. I think it's kind of the wave of the future. Our covenants haven't been updated in, I don't know, 40 some years. I also used to be on the HOA board and tried to get that changed. You know, it was going to be at that time $5,000 or $6,000 to update the covenants. Nobody wanted to pay for it. I mean, our HOA dues are $72 a year, and we had a hard time getting that passed through. So, you know, I think there's some folks in the neighborhood that maybe aren't open to it, but maybe aren't as educated as maybe we all could be. So I thank you for your time and my 2 cents, and hope, you know, we can all just move forward and be happy neighbors.
Thank you, Trish.
That was our last hand raised. If anyone is online and wishing to make comment, please use the raise your hand function or *9. Seeing none, I believe that's the end of public participation.
And I don't believe there's anyone in person who hasn't already spoken. Therefore, excuse me, we will close the public comment phase of this hearing and offer an opportunity for the applicants, if you'd like to come up and provide some response to some of what you've heard. Please come on up.
Well, again, we're not out to disrupt anyone's quality of life or anything like that. And I just felt and feel that a short-term rental is a safer, cleaner, better way to rent a property from my own reasons. And I know there's a lot of opposition to that, and as far as notifying the HOA earlier on, there was really no reason to. There was nothing in the covenants. I believe they were written in '79 that indicated anything that would be a problem with the short term. So maybe I missed that. Maybe it was my misunderstanding of the feelings and attitudes of the other people living in that area. I really didn't see anything wrong with it. I thought it was kind of normal procedure.
And, you know, as for not going to a HOA meeting, they only have one a year. And, you know, so it was the timing of how we were doing it. We were not trying to cause trouble. We really didn't know how we were moving forward. And it wasn't like we were trying to pull something. And we were working on that house. We didn't know if we were going to sell it, move into it, and then we started looking into the short-term rental. And then, you know, we wanted to get through a lot of that process because we didn't know if we would pass those inspections. And so that's the main thing. We didn't do it to be, you know, sneaky and trying to harm anything. And as for the driveway, you know, when people go on a vacation, they don't take 10 cars, you know. A lot of them fly in to the airport. They try to get as less cars as they possibly can because they don't want to spend the money and come to a vacation. Or if they drive, it's a family in a van or something. My daughter, you know, there's 5 of them. It's like they're going to come in one vehicle. And, you know, to make it think that there's going to be 10 vehicles, you know, there isn't. Because one, we won't allow it. And you know, we can say you can only have 1 car there. You have to make 10 trips. You know, I mean, I don't know, but it's like that part is really shouldn't even be an issue. And because of the laws and because of everything. But you know, it's very disheartening to hear people, and it's we really honestly are not trying to hurt the neighborhood, and so that's all
That's it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks.
Of course. So at this time, I will see if any of my colleagues have any final questions for staff. I have one. I think I know the answer, but I will offer it. Do either of you have any questions for Laura or staff that is here? You do, Commissioner?
Just for staff real quick, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Yes, of course.
I don't know, maybe, Jenny, I can ask you this question. I'm just looking through some of the comments, and I think I also know the answer to this question, excuse me. Are short-term rentals considered single-family residence, or what is it classified in our code as? I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to confirm that publicly.
They're classified as a commercial lodging facility use.
That's what I thought. Okay. Because I see one of these then that they're considered single family, so I just wanted to kind of clarify that so publicly. Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens, you have any questions at this time?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then my question is this. Are there, in this neighborhood, this Longs Peak Estates neighborhood, are there currently short-term rentals operating?
There are not any approved short-term rentals in this neighborhood or in the direct vicinity.
Thank you, Laura. I do not have any more questions. Therefore, I believe we can move into the deliberation phase of this process, and I will ask Commissioner Shattuck McNally, would you like to begin, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues that we have been dealing with since we became commissioners is this land use issue of short-term rentals. And that's one of the reasons that we updated our short-term rental regulations, I believe, starting in 2022 and then in 2023. And they have been, was a very long and arduous process that had a lot of consternation and concerning comments from neighbors, and certainly some areas around our county have more issues with short terminals than others, but it is an issue, and so certainly we are aware of all the negative pros and cons with this, and so I think I appreciate everyone being here today, everyone making public comments, everyone sharing their concerns, and certainly it is something that's not an easy decision. I appreciate the applicants staying with it and understanding kind of that it is a long process. These aren't a use by right. They're kind of this process to get this approval and to have this, but it is also it's something that is you'll be fortunate to get one because it is kind of a commercial property and making a profit from that, and that's why a lot of folks get into this. And I think it is sometimes folks forget. That's why we have land use laws to help kind of protect the neighbors, but also make sure people know what's allowed and uses on their properties. So I wanted to say that this is never an easy conversation, but listening to the comments from the neighbors and kind of understanding who would be managing the property and kind of knowing that the feel and where that property is and where it's close to. I know these are the old regulations that we have that little bit of discretion as commissioners to talk about whether this is compatible with the neighborhood being right adjacent to the school. That I have concerns with this not meeting the criteria of number 2 with incompatibility with the neighborhood and also being right next to a school. And so I will not be supporting this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens, your turn.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone who came out today. I'd ask the folks in the audience to kind of not talk while we're deliberating here. So I appreciate everybody who came out to speak today and who came out online today. I think it's really important to have these conversations publicly. I will agree with Commissioner Shattuck McNally. I think that there are impacts in the on the neighborhood that have not been mitigated. So I don't think it meets criteria 1 or 2. I have some specific concerns of this kind of commercial lodging facility in a neighborhood that has a school and no sidewalks. I think that there are safety concerns that I don't feel have been mitigated in this instance. We have 31, and I did count all the, whoever said there were 31 houses in this neighborhood was correct. It looked like there were 31, and 23 people have real concerns about the impact that this would have on the existing and future development of this area. So I do not think it meets the review criteria we've been asked to use. I don't think it meets review criteria 1 or 2. My concern would be, traffic specifically around an elementary school with many different people coming in and out. And yeah, people might stay a week, but people could only stay a night. And that would be a lot of different people in a small neighborhood with an elementary school, and so I don't think that is a compatible use in this neighborhood. So I will be voting to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, commissioners. So I also will be not supporting this application, and I will attempt to offer my rationale. Again, we are charged with looking at the 5 general review criterion and criterion 1 and criterion 2 based on the community input have been in question. I think criterion 1, the proposed use has minimal impacts on existing and future development. I think we've heard somewhat resoundingly, although certainly appreciate Trish's comments and support, but that this is not a compatible use with that particular neighborhood for all the reasons that have been stated. So I don't believe that criterion has been met, and that is fundamentally what I base my decision on. This is a really hard thing because I struggle with these applications all the time because it's a balance between people's property rights. I think you have no ill intentions, Jim and Deborah, that you're wanting to maximize the use of this particular property, that you live close by. And I'm sorry that there have been some back and forth comments that have not have somewhat bordered on disparaging, and that's most unfortunate. I think the opportunity moving forward is a couple of folks stated, and I would recommend or at least suggest that communication can always be improved. It seems like the HOA covenant is a little bit outdated, and maybe there's some logic to trying to update that covenant. But of course, that's up to the neighborhood, and I think the times do change. There are short-term rentals. We have regulations in place to make sure that there's compatibility, and so that's where I'm at with this particular proposal. I'm sorry, folks. I just am. And with that, let's see, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, would you offer the motion, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
I believe if you go to
Yeah, but the page, but I think she also put it, I think
Yeah.
it's in her slides.
It's on page 8, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of County Commissioners deny the Russell short-term rental file number 22-ZONE 3397.
Thank you. That's a proper motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That motion to deny this application is approved unanimously. Thank you all for taking the time to be here.
Mr. Chair, can we have a short break between?
Let's take a 5+ minute break, yes, of course, and then we'll go on to our second discussion item, the sign appeal, Cecil sign appeal. Thank you all very much for taking the time. Okay, welcome back, folks. We took a little bit of a pause. We have one discussion item remaining on our land use hearing agenda, the Cecil sign appeals. At this time, I will ask Mr. Justin Curry to do the staff presentation. We'll have an opportunity for questions, and then we'll have the applicants come up and present their case, and we'll go from there. Justin, you're on, sir. Excuse me.
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Justin. I'm here to do a presentation on the Cecil sign appeal. So the location is located at 6545 East Highway 60. It's this blue parcel here located on the northwest corner of I-25 and Highway 60. And then just this gray area here is just east of the incorporated area of the town of Johnstown. So application requests appeal to 7 Article 8 Larimer County Land Use Code standards to allow new electronic message display, or EMD, billboard located on the site. And this is the proposed location here on the property. An appeal summary, so the more detailed and appeals requests are located in my staff report, and so if you have any more questions on that, we can refer to those. But this slide would just be an overall summary of the appeals. So the first appeal would be the prohibition of billboards being a allowed sign type or allowed use in our code. The next appeal the applicant proposed was the definition of a billboard, but after a conversation with the county attorney's office, that appeal will not be required because they're not appealing a definition, but instead a sign type. And like this, from with that type, the architectural specs of that type. So if you have questions on that, you can reach out to the attorney. We can talk to the attorney's office for that, for more clarification if needed. The third appeal is a change to the display standard, which currently our code requires that the display or images change every 90 seconds. The applicant is proposing a change every 60 seconds. EMD as an element of a sign. So in our code now, electronic message displays are allowed as, I guess I want to say an attachment or accompaniment of a sign as part of a larger general structure. They're proposing, the entire sign or the sign face to be that electronic message display instead of as a added element. Appeal number 5 is the maximum sign area. The applicant's allowed 190 square feet of maximum sign area based on the length of their building and adjacent to right-of-way frontage. And they are proposing 396 square feet of a sign area per sign face. Appeal number 6 would be the sign setbacks. They are proposing a 5-foot setback where a minimum, if it were a freestanding sign for this size, would be a minimum of 36 feet would be required. And then the last one is the illumination standards. Our code now for EMD displays requires that only 50% of the total sign face can be an EMD, and where this one is proposing around 94% of the sign face be an electronic message display. With an addition of those sign appeals, the applicant is also proposing to remove 24 existing non-EMD billboards throughout the county, and there's a map here. Most of them located on County Road 14, or excuse me, Highway 14 or East Mulberry. And then the review criteria for appeals. Excuse me. So the county commissioners must consider the following review criteria. And again, this was laid out in more detail in my staff report, but here again is a summary of the requirements. Approval of the appeal is consistent with the purpose and intent of this code. There are extraordinary or exceptional conditions on the site, which would result in a peculiar or undue hardship. And then the approval of the appeal would not result in an economic or marketing advantage over other businesses. And with that, development service teams recommend approval of the Cecil sign appeal. And then there is a suggested motion, and there are 5 conditions of approval. A couple of them are pretty standard with our appeals, but there's some unique ones here. One is that the proposed sign is adjacent to I-25 or a CDOT right-of-way. They do require that the applicant apply for an outdoor advertising permit, and so requesting that be completed prior to getting building permit approval through the county. The building permit shall be applied for within 180 days of this approval. And then all signs noted in the application of the building permit for the new EMD billboard. And then proof of removal must be submitted to the county planning division for review and approval as part of the sign permit application. And then this approval is given only for the new sign as indicated in the project materials and the staff report. And with that, I can answer any questions that the commissioners have for staff.
And if I could just jump in and make one quick clarification, just pointing out that the proposed new sign is in exchange for removing, I believe it's 24 existing signs as part of that proposal.
Yes, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Justin. Colleagues, do you have any questions of staff at this time? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions. Those other 24 billboard signs they're removing are not electronic, correct?
That is correct. They're just standard billboards.
And do we know if those are lighted up during the day or have any?
I do not know, but the applicant is here. They could probably answer that question.
And do we know in our code with night sky and those kinds of standards, do we know how much this is projecting up towards night sky, and with that's a huge sign and putting a lot of light pollution. I know it's along I-25, but it's still light pollution. So
there are some details in my staff report that the applicant could probably better address, but I know that they have. I'm gonna mess up the language. Basically, have it on there that can censor either ambient light or non-ambient light, so as it gets darker, or if there's a storm cloud, the message display will dim. There are some other technology and things on there that can reduce the night sky pollution in more detail than I can.
I read through that. But I just wanted to kind of hear what you thought about that. So, and then my last question is, there's certainly a lot of appeals for land use code that we worked very hard on. So, and can you restate again, is an app, and I know it's an application, but I don't know where the applicant, can you explain the undue hardship on the applicant again?
So on the application, the primary undue hardship is being adjacent to I-25 right-of-way, and from the site plan to the elevation, or the elevation of I-25, I believe, is 19 or 20 feet above the grade of the property. And so in order for, particularly with the height, in order for a sign like this, or I guess any sign, there needs to be one that reduced setback, and then also the higher than required by code height due to its adjacency to I-25 and that elevation change.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Justin. Commissioner,
explain the what you were saying about appeal number 2, the definition of billboard.
I'm going to defer to the attorney staff for that one.
This is Christine Luckison with the County Attorney's Office. So appealing the definition wouldn't get them to where they need to go. They need to appeal the standard. So they don't want to change how we define what that type of sign is. They need to change the prohibition on what they want to do. Does that make sense? So that appeal wouldn't really get them to where they need to go.
Would that be an attempt to sort of appeal something in our land use code more than appealing this specific situation? I mean...
Right, yeah. Okay. So that would be changing the definition, which would be something different. That's not what's needed to accomplish their goal.
And we're not interested in probably doing that anyway, because this is not a question of our land use code, but a question of this particular sign.
That is correct, right. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Justin, a question that I have is if you care to comment on the letter we received from the town of Johnstown. What's your takeaway from that particular letter? And I suspect the applicants will want to comment on that as well.
Yes, when we receive not just this circumstance, but other applications from other jurisdictions, if they have concerns or issues or oppose it, there's, as a staff, we only can review the one land use code that we have. And so as long as they're meeting our standards and our requirements and going through our appeals process or whatever review process is necessary, that's, the review or the plan or application we review. We highly encourage and use other suggestive language that if you can accommodate or can meet some of these concerns, these issues, to please do that, and then to reach out to the corresponding jurisdiction for more information. And then in this case, particularly with the town of Johnstown, a lot of the items they mentioned or that we're using for their argument to oppose it were the items that the applicant is actually appealing those standards. So there's a lot of ones in there that, the billboard as a sign type is not allowed. So in order to accomplish that use, these 5 to 6 appeals need to happen. So again, a lot of the ones that Johnstown had were the standards that they were appealing. So it's, kind of a tricky place to be.
Commissioner Kafalis over here. Sorry, if I might offer some additional information. This is Rebecca Everett, Community Development Director.
Yes, ma'am.
This application, a significant aspect of this application was the conversation about the ratio of replacement of existing signs and new signs. And
there was a lot of discussion at the staff level about the level of community benefit of removing sign clutter and distraction, driver distraction with removal of existing signs versus adding potential distraction or sign clutter with a new sign. And the reason that billboards are not allowed in Larimer County is because of our desire as a county to maintain a certain aesthetic in our community and to ensure public safety. And so there is definitely a weighing of scales as staff analyze this application on how much benefit might come from the removal of 24 existing sign structures, and that was a negotiated number at the staff level. In exchange for a new electronic billboard, and a consideration that the location of a billboard is more appropriate along I-25 and a high-speed roadway where it's expected visually than the locations where a lot of billboards exist in our community now along other arterial roads that are more interior to residential areas and communities. So that was part of the discussion too, and it relates to the Johnstown comments as well, that there was a consideration by staff of the broader community cost and benefit in evaluating this set of appeals.
Rebecca, thank you very much. Those comments are very helpful, and I'm reminded that I think the ratio is 3-to-1. I think 3 times as much square footage is being removed as what is being considered for the EMD billboard on I-25.
Yes, I believe, and Justin could speak to this, there are a few different ratios. There's a ratio of number of sign structures removed, number of sign faces removed, and then, as you stated, amount of sign area that is replaced. And all of those ratios are greater than 1-to-1.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Justin? Okay, play it safe. Then at this time, unless there are other questions, yeah, Commissioner.
If I might, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm just thinking, if these are removed, these 48, and we have this new sign code, what is keeping in future years from those appearing again?
The land use code does not allow new billboards without an appeal such as this. So for any new large, freestanding pole sign like this to be approved, it would need to come to a public hearing with the county commissioners.
And that includes the smaller ones?
Yes, and I'll look to Justin, but I believe it's a freestanding pole sign of any kind would require an appeal. Is that correct?
Based on my land use code, depending on the yes and no, depending on the size of the sign area, there's a definition of what a billboard is. I believe I had it written down. I think it's over a sign face is larger than 70 square feet. So if it's under that, or if it's a monument sign and things like that, it would not be necessarily come here because an appeal would not be required. So as long as the proposed freestanding signs stay within our land use code, an appeal will not be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you for the question. I think we're good with questions for now. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicants, if you all would come on up. Please introduce yourselves for the record. I suspect you know the routine. And how much time do you think you'll need?
Only an hour. I'm just joking.
Yes, I appreciate that that's a joke, and
yes,
at this point,
just a few minutes.
We could discuss how funny that is, but we'll let it go.
Okay. So Steve Cecil, last name is Cecil, with Lamar Advertising.
And how about, honestly, about how much time do you think you'll need?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's quite all right.
Probably 10, 15 minutes.
It's good. Thank you,
Sorry
sir.
about that. Yep. Thank you, Justin and staff, for all of your hard work on this project, which is also supported by CDOT, and Noah Bills with the City of Fort Collins also has supported this. Do I need that? Okay. And commissioners for taking the time and consideration as well, so thank you. I'm going to try and answer every question. I was jotting it down as you all were having those, so if I miss some, please feel free to ask them again. Apologize if you have to. One of them was assigned illumination. And the sign illumination has what we call louvers that help prevent uplifting of light and illumination. And we have what I call the beehive, which helps dim the sign if it's overcast, if it's at night, and the sign is basically at nighttime running off of less than 10% illumination to avoid any distractions. When you talk about the number of current signs, these 24 locations with 34 faces, how many of those are illuminated? Multiple are already illuminated signs. I believe that hopefully that answers your questions on that. The total square footage of signs of being removed on the 34 faces is 3,163. And we're asking for 792 square feet, which is a double-sided sign. So not one side is that size, it'd be both sides, which is a 4-to-1 ratio is what I have. Also, when you talk about can this go through moving forward, there isn't other sign companies that have this many signs to remove and propose a new sign in a more suitable location. The sign's location on Mr. Murdoch's property, we're removing both of those signs. Both are currently illuminated, both are conforming, and we're replacing them with one sign that CDOT has shared that is conforming as well. Hopefully, commissioners, you would like to move forward, and I do have a couple of comments on the approval process if you choose to do so. If I can mention those now, or if you would like me to wait and answer any other questions you may have.
You have a presentation, Steve?
I do.
I reckon you should go through that presentation
First, okay. All right. Let's see if I'm getting this right. So not to go over the same thing that Justin just mentioned, but 24 signs being removed, which is 34 faces for one new sign at its current location, or really close, within a few feet. That sign is currently illuminated as well right now. The conditions for approval, I have 4 comments on the conditions of approval if commissioners choose to move forward with that. And one of them is prior to submitting the sign permit applications with the county, the applicant will obtain a CDOT permit and include it with the sign permit. So in the past, I provide a local permit to CDOT in order to receive a CDOT permit. It references local certification or a copy of a sign permit. I've always used a sign permit, so my recommendation would allow Lamar to receive a sign permit to receive a CDOT permit. And I'll mention that a few times in the next 3 comments for conditions of approval. One of the conditions was, and I believe this may have been intended for development, maybe a gas station or something. I don't think the language here was intended for this type of project, but upon approval, the applicant shall apply for a building permit for all existing and proposed signs on the property and receive all necessary inspections for those permits. I'm only able to speak on behalf of Lamar's assets, which are the 2 signs, and I'm only proposing 1 sign. So I would be removing those and hopefully, with your approval and direction, building the 1 proposed sign. So my ask would be to allow us to submit and receive building permits on the 1 location. My X's are going a little slow there, sorry. There we go. The next one, building permit shall be applied for within 180 days of this approval. My hope is if I'm able to obtain a building permit prior to removing all of the signs, which will be on the next slide, so they're kind of combined, is 180 days. If I have to remove all of the signs prior to receiving a building permit, it could be a bit challenging. So I would like to do them at the same time. And in doing so, I would request that one of the conditions for the final inspection, whether it's an electrical inspection, which the sign is useless if it doesn't have electricity, be provide proof that all 24 locations, 34 faces have been removed prior to receiving the final electrical sign off or final permit. This would allow me to start the manufacturing process, not the building, the manufacturing process that takes about 4 months or so to manufacture this type of structure along with the digital faces, to where I can do that at the same time as removing the 24 signs. This would help avoid 4 months or more of loss of communication for local businesses that are utilizing the 24 signs, and could create a financial hardship for that big of a gap from removing all of the signs to building one sign. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Steve. Colleagues, do you have any questions of the applicant at this time? All right, then. Thank you. We'll come back to you, I'm sure.
Okay, absolutely.
So, I have some questions of staff, but I believe we need to open public comment, and don't see a sellout crowd in the audience in person. Jenny, has anyone signed up online to offer comment on this proposal?
We have no attendees online. 0.
Therefore, I believe it's appropriate to close public comment, and therefore, I don't think there's a need for you to offer rebuttal or responses to the lack of comment. So at this time, let's open it up for any questions of staff, and then we'll go from there. Commissioner Stevens or Shadrack McNally, do you folks have other questions? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, the applicant has suggested his concerns with the conditions of approval, and I'm curious what staff's response is to that. Maybe our county assistant or our county attorney would like, what does that look like? Because that would change a lot of the conditions of approval, and I'm not sure, they're suggesting changes in condition. We don't, not you all, and I'm just curious what that looks like or what you thought, so.
So I'll let Justin first address planning's thinking on when they drafted these conditions, and then we can go from there. That's okay.
And is just to kind of further clarify the question from Commissioner Shadrack McNally, are we looking at, in particular, condition number 4, or there's some other proposed modifications to the 5 conditions of approval?
I believe the main adjustments, or that the applicant requests, are for condition 4, with the removal of the existing billboards or existing signs, and then also with condition number 1 for that required CDOT outdoor advertising permit or application. And so it's just a matter of the timing of those and when it occurs. I had conversations with the applicant, and it was under their understanding that CDOT requires an approved building permit from the jurisdiction before applying for that outdoor advertising permit. We reviewed the application provided by the applicant from CDOT, and there was no indication on the application that a approved building permit would be required. There's some information on there regarding written approval from the jurisdiction and whether they had it or didn't. And so staff felt that if it were to be approved today, that the recorded FNR, findings and resolution, would meet that requirement of the CDOT application. But that, and then, let's see. Sorry, I'm just going
So I guess just to clarify, so staff is not recommending a change to condition 1. Staff is recommending that we believe that the approved FNR, should this be approved, should fulfill that condition. We understand the applicant objects to that, but staff would recommend leaving condition 1 as written and as proposed by staff.
Thanks, Jenny.
And then the applicant would also, there's a lot of talk of, the building permit being approved. They can still apply for a building permit prior to these items being done, so we can have it and review it, and then just once we receive confirmation that the CDOT permit has been approved and that the existing billboards have been removed, then we would go ahead and issue the building permit.
So recommendation is to keep condition 1, not to adjust or change that.
Correct. And the same for condition number 4. Staff, we checked with the county building official about an electrical permit, whether there'd be a separate electrical inspection to correspond to the applicant's request to in this case, and there would not be. The county does not have a separate electrical inspection that we could hang a condition of approval on in this case. The inspection would, sounds like it would be simple enough that it wouldn't be required as a separate step in the process. So staff recommends keeping condition number 4 the same. We feel strongly that there should be a trigger of removing all of the signs before we allow the new sign to be and constructed. So we would recommend keeping that the same. If the commission wishes to pursue a different agreement, we have some suggestions, but staff ultimately recommends leaving condition 4 as is.
May I comment? Yeah, thank you, Jenny. What about, I think I understood from the presentation that there was some hardship related to in terms of timeframes. Could you maybe clarify that, and what is your do you share that concern?
So I guess I can speak to what I understand the applicant's concern to be, and then they can clarify that. They would not be able to build their new sign until they have the building permit approval, and we're saying we won't give you the building permit approval until you take down all 24 signs. And so they're saying there'd be about a 4-month gap where they would have no advertising because they would have to take down the signs and they would be constructing the new sign.
And wasn't there something in what, and maybe we'll ask Steve to come up, but wasn't there something about the ability to move forward with designing or manufacturing the sign? Could you talk about that, please?
That's the gap where they would need an approved permit to be able to submit to manufacture their sign, is I believe what they're stating.
Oh.
But they could have to clarify that for you.
Thank you. Are you folks okay with asking them to come back up? Steve, would you like to come up and help us understand what the issues are here at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. So the 4-month gap or so, could be longer, just depends. So the manufacturing of the sign, not the building. So once it's manufactured and delivered to the site, the building process will take less than a week. And so the manufacturing process takes 4, possibly longer months to manufacture the sign. And so the manufacturer, I provide a local and state permit if it requires both, and then they'll start manufacturing the sign. The location in question would require a crane to remove the 2 signs on the property, and I would like to use the crane one time in 1 week to remove both of the signs and build the new sign for safety reasons, be more efficient as well. And there's some suggestions I provided also staff, as I'm willing to sign an affidavit stating that we will not turn the sign on if that is what is needed. But I would like to accomplish removing and start the manufacturing process at the same time, if able.
And the way the condition of approval is written now, you would not be able to go forward with beginning the manufacturing process, is that correct?
Yeah, and that's more of an internal policy that is not, a state or county guideline, but yes, that is how it is as of right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, any?
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in. Sorry, it's Rebecca over here.
Well, I have to get used to you sitting over there.
I know, I'm sorry.
Help us out here.
I think the tension here is that as the county, we need to have a point of leverage to ensure that the signs come down. And one way to do that is to hold off on issuance of the building permit until we've confirmed that all those signs come down. There could be other ways of ensuring that we have some leverage, or that Lamar is accountable to that requirement. And Lamar has proposed, Mr. Cecil has proposed some of those options. And so that is a decision that you could make as staff. We have proposed that issuing that building permit is our strongest point of leverage there to ensure that those signs come down. But it's not the only way to ensure that that condition is met.
Could we pull that slide back up that shows that condition and what some of the proposed adjustments are being offered? Like the affidavit, for example. Can we pull that slide back up so we have visual and then see what my commissioner colleagues think? I think it was the presentation from these folks. Wasn't it yours?
It was, yeah. It was on the last page of mine. Yep.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in really quick. This is Christine Luckison. Instead of doing an affidavit, if you want to update the condition to be more flexible or to do something different, my guidance would be to not do an affidavit, just to update the condition to reflect what you want to accomplish. Does that make sense? And planning staff can work with you on what language, but.
So what are the other than an affidavit, what are the other options for leveraging to ensure that indeed the signs are taken down?
So an option would be to say before the sign can be operational, before it can be functional, before it can be turned on, or before things like that to get there. Whatever makes you comfortable, whatever you're trying to do.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Cecil.
I do have one other option as well. If we took down maybe 25% instead of all of them, or 50%, something like that. I mean, Lamar is going to remove them all. We are not going to turn the lights on when there's any of the 24 signs remaining, but I'm happy to, like a deposit or whatever you would like to call it.
So I'm kind of monopolizing this, but I'm inclined to provide some level of flexibility, and I would welcome specific suggestions from staff. If the affidavit is not the way to go, I'm not sure about this 25% thing. If you could offer recommendations, and ultimately, if we all agree that some level of accommodation is appropriate.
So staff also considered another alternative, which would be for the applicant to issue a letter of credit or bond for the demolition cost for the removal of all 24 signs. And if they were to provide that financial assurity with a, authorization for the county to remove the signs, should they not perform that duty, then we could potentially be okay with that alternative for issuing the permit.
I think in terms of language and the condition, rather than, you could consider revising it to say rather than prior to issuance of a building permit, could be prior to the sign becoming operational. And that would, and then you could choose if you wanted to pair that with some kind of financial assurance as well. So that would be some language that allows them to move forward with permitting and construction and just not be operational until the other signs are removed.
Thank you. Before I respond to that suggestion, colleagues, do you have any thoughts or inclination of how we want to move forward? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I understand the cost of moving and renting cranes, and I understand that it makes sense, but also I do agree that we need some kind of leverage to kind of, more than, I agree, I don't think an affidavit, but I just, it's just important, I think, to have some kind of leverage to kind of make sure all those other signs come down. And I do think I feel a lot better about the illumination. It's just we've had some signs in the past that have just, for half a mile or a mile away, just glaring. So I still have trauma from that, I think. So I agree. I want to recognize and support staff's concerns. And so I'm leaning on staff here to provide the best, if flexibility is, what my colleagues want to support. I can understand that need, and I'm looking for kind of a recommendation. I lean more towards what staff are comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then number one is still, that if that, I just want to make sure that one was wrapped up as well. I'm still kind of,
I think we're
distracted. So
I think we're good with number one, condition of approval number one. Commissioner Stevens, do you want to offer any thoughts before I comment?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would defer to staff on the best way to do this, but, we should if we approve this, we should have a way of making sure that those signs go away sooner than later. And so I like the idea. I like the idea that was suggested of sort of they can't get turned on until those others are removed. That seems like it would work.
Thank you. So is two options. One is, in terms of the leverage, is changing the language to say that before the sign is operational, proof has to be that's taken down. And then that alone, is that sufficient assurance, or do you also think we need to add in the financial assurance piece of this, or Jenny or Rebecca?
I think, and I don't know if that the sign cannot be operational until all the other signs have been removed, and that a financial assurance may not be necessary to ensure that we have the authority we need to enforce on that. But I think there's still that is an option if it would make the board feel more comfortable to have some kind of additional financial assurance in place. And I'm trying to pull the language into a document here to hopefully share on screen, though I just got a low battery notification. So
yeah, and again, before, if the language that we would move to is before it's operational, that would allow them to go forward with the manufacturing process, but they couldn't turn on the lights until we knew that all the other signs were down. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Correct.
And the attorneys seem to be comfortable with that. We don't often have our attorneys feel comfortable, so that might be a big deal. Yes, Christine.
Yes, Commissioner Kafalis, this is Frank Haug. I think you can just say it cannot be operational until after that, and then if they do put it up, then we have the ability to basically tear it down or to do whatever we need to do and then pursue the costs against them. I don't think it's going to come to that, but I think it would give us the legal recourse. If we had to pursue that, we'd be able to. You can do a bond if you want. I have no idea what the cost of a demolition of a sign would be, but we could try to figure that out, I guess. I don't know that that's necessary.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Christine, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Well, my inclination is to take the path of somewhat less resistance, and that is to change the condition 4 to, as we've discussed, that it would the new sign would not be operational until we had proof that all the other signs were down, and without the bond, if we don't need the bond. That is my my inclination. I don't know if my colleagues concur, or if you have any other thoughts before we move forward. Yeah, Commissioner.
My quick question is a legal one. I don't know if Christine or Frank, I'll go with Christine since she's up there. If we issue what's the legal, even with the condition of approval, if we issue a building permit and give them permit so they can go through the process, that's kind of an approval, and even with the condition of approval. So what kind of complexities does that present if they do not follow through? I mean, I'm saying they're not, but we've all been there where someone says they're going to do something, and it's just on the behalf of the county and the residents that we want to make sure that's what they say they're going to do is going to be done. So
by adding that condition that Rebecca had mentioned, the enforcement instrument would be the FNRs, and that is the document that we would use to enforce that condition. So even though they'd have the building permit, we'd also have their agreement on that condition of approval.
And that would be strong enough to I mean, I know it is, but I just need to hear it publicly and clarify. That would be strong enough to say, you shall not pass, you shall not turn this on until all this is done. So, and we would not have extra steps or extra litigation or things to do to have to go through all of that. I'm trying to make sure that
we would go through the normal district court process, yes, but that would be the enforcement instrument.
Okay, so it wouldn't cause more undue steps or process for us as a county, which I'm already cognizant of costs and.
We could add a condition that they would cover our litigation expenses or something like that, but no, it wouldn't be any different than any other land use enforcement that we do through an FNR.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
And to add to that a little bit, sorry, I did speak with the building official this afternoon regarding this, and there is, a final inspection on all building permits, and we could add it in there saying, hey, upon final inspection, don't approve this unless X, Y, and Z are completed. In this case, all these signs are taken down. So that way on the final inspection for the inspectors, they will know that this can't be approved unless these certain conditions are met.
Okay. So I think we've had good discussion. Yeah, Commissioner Stevens, help us out a little more.
Yeah, I'll tell you where I'm having some heartburn is our a municipality in our county is not in favor of this. And I don't think that's one of the criteria. But can anyone speak to that? I mean, about what those conversations look like? Because, this is area that's in a growth management area. Is that right? Am I right in saying that it's in a growth management area?
The town of Johnstown has a growth management area. It's not one that they have an IGA with the county. So we don't factor that into, we don't have any kind of an IGA like we do with Loveland and Fort Collins, where some of these items come up. There's a process to go through. So we don't have that with Johnstown at the moment.
Okay, but they still were a community that we contacted. They were still a referral agency or a referral community.
That's correct, and I think I'm going to lean on what Rebecca stated earlier. Johnstown was viewing it from a perspective of not wanting an additional billboard in their growth management area, not from the reduction of 24 additional signs within the rest of the county area, and that's where we felt strongly that the reduction outweighed the benefit of, or was a benefit that outweighed providing the new sign. And that's where the county felt that it was worth going against the recommendation of Johnstown in this case to add the additional sign, because it was worthwhile to remove 24 additional signs that don't happen to be within the Johnstown GMA.
But none of the signs are there, so they aren't seeing the direct benefit. We have areas of the county that are seeing the direct benefit from the reduction.
Generally, yes. I believe there are 2 signs on this site now, and so they're reducing the 2 to 1 sign in this case. But yes, most of the benefit is not within the Johnstown GMA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Commissioner.
Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Stevens, because I had that same concern about the municipality. So I went back, and that was one of the first sections, was that only 1 display shall be permitted on each lot development, and this will take this from 2 down to 1. And I know it's bigger, and I did have that concern. But thank you. I did look, and I appreciate you clarifying that we don't have an IGA with them, which is not saying that we don't take their concerns very seriously, which I have read through this letter like 3 times, and I read through the response from the applicant, and I know they don't agree with the some of the statements, and I just appreciate the size is they're very much a concern for them, but if the light is not as bright as, because I know they had that other really one that I found very bright, and you could see from like over a mile away. That one was in Johnstown, so I can understand their concern. But obviously, I'm not sure how that, if they approved of it or not. So I guess I'm looking at our attorneys again. If it's a GMA, but we have an IGA, and if is there, what legal courses does the town have? This is not, they say possible annexation, but we don't know if this business wants to be annexed. So I'm curious about that argument and that question.
Can I, really quick?
Oh, well, that's up to Mr. Chair. I was asking the attorney first, but
Let's hear from the attorneys.
So, you want to go, Frank? You had a case like this.
Well, I think what Mr. Curie is saying is that in this, and it's true of any of the IGs we have with other cities or anything, what the goal is to try to have consistent development, but the ultimate decision rests with the board. In this particular case, you guys have 3 criteria. You got criteria A, which is whether it's consistent with the intent of the code. You have criteria B, which is whether there's extraordinary or exceptional conditions on the site. And then you have criteria C, which is whether it gives you an additional marketing advantage over other people in the similar situation. So, whether you think it meets those criteria or doesn't, I think you can decide how you want to factor in the decisions or the comments from the cities within the bounds of those criteria. You're not required to go with what the city says, but it is something where generally the idea is to have cooperative development, but it's completely up to you all.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, that is helpful. Thank you. So I think I believe we're ready to move into deliberation. Am I correct in that statement, colleagues? So, yes?
Can I say one more thing?
Yes?
So I am a resident of the town of Johnstown. I will say just here recently, the town annexed some property from Larimer County with the condition that that property owner is allowed to build a 14 by 48 digital sign. And our sign is much smaller. So the town isn't opposed to them, just maybe certain situations. But I am a member and a resident of the town of Johnstown.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. And I think at this point, you're welcome to go on back with your colleague there. All right, so we have a couple of a particular proposed change to condition of approval number 4, but before we go there, let's deliberate and see what direction we want to head with this proposal. Commissioner Stevens, you're on.
Yeah, as I said, I've been wrestling with this. I actually don't want to approve this appeal. I don't think it's consistent with the code. I just feel like there are too many appeals here. Our code says that we prohibit billboards. Our code says we prohibit signs that are of the size. It's doubling the amount of size. So I can't support this. To me, it is not consistent with our current code.
Thank you. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Colleagues, I'm really wrestling with this as well. And it is a very large sign, and it is very appealing to get rid of 24 other billboards, which would really be beneficial overall for the county. What I wrestle with is just the size of it, and that it has. We worked on those regulations, and we had the 50% of the total face be the electronic portion, and it just seems to make it much larger than we had approved of the code, and then to have larger space, it just kind of it just a lot of appeals. I'm really torn about this, and torn about allowing these conditions. A lot of appeals. So then I kind of go back to, we just got done with those codes and we worked on those, and then we have a lot of folks coming in and wanting to appeal a lot of them. So I'm really torn, and like I said, I read through that letter a few times. I've read through the applicant's response, and it is very. I don't sure how I feel about this. It is very appealing to get rid of the 24 signs, and to be honest with you, I'm still conflicted as we sit here and get ready to take a vote. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate that. So I'm inclined to support this application. I think that the reminder that we go back to the 3 review criteria for these, there are a lot of requests for variances, but I think staff has justified why those appeals are being requested. For example, regarding the height and all of that, it's been pointed out that the location of the billboard or the EMD sign is below grade, and therefore, if there's going to be any effectiveness to the messaging, it needs to be a bit higher. So staff, in my view, has demonstrated the rationale behind the various appeals, even though they are numerous, And I think the community benefit argument is more than valid. Having traveled along East Mulberry many times and up on towards Ted's place, those signs are definitely very visible. So I think there is a community benefit there, and I think that's further justification. And again, I believe that the review criteria approval of the appeal is consistent with the purpose and intent of this code. This particular EMD sign would be in a commercial area. On I-25, there are similar kinds of signs, I think, on I-25. We already talked a little bit about extraordinary or exceptional conditions resulting in some of the changes that have been proposed. And then and this would not necessarily provide a marketing advantage because, as was stated in the application, there's also some community benefit in terms of public service announcements and those kinds of things. So I'm inclined to support it with the adjustment to condition number 4, which would basically say that before the new sign is operational, there has to be proof that all the other signs have come down. So that's where I'm at. So with that, let's see. Do you have any? Well,
Mr. Chair, might I offer, we do have revised conditions from staff if you'd like to see them.
May we see that, please?
So staff is recommending actually eliminating condition 2 with some word changes in condition 1 and condition 4.
So could you read those out loud, slowly and clearly?
Certainly. Prior to submitting a sign permit application with the county, the applicant will obtain all required permits, including the required CDOT outdoor advertising permit, and must include issued permits with the sign permit application. We would eliminate condition 2, and the next condition would be building permits shall be applied for within 180 days of this approval. And then all signs noted in the application materials included in this application as attachment A, noted as signs proposed for removal, must be removed prior to the operation of the new EMD billboard. Proof of removal must be submitted to the County Planning Division for review and approval prior to the sign becoming operational. And then the last condition remains the same. This approval is given only for the sign as indicated in the project materials in attachment A.
Thank you, Jenny. That's very helpful. So, colleagues, we're at a place where there is a suggested motion for approval. I'm hearing that one of us is in support, one of us perhaps is not. I don't know if you've had any reconsideration, Commissioner Stevens, but at some point we need to get someone to offer a motion. Any thoughts there? Are you still?
Yeah, I haven't changed my mind.
Okay. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, do you have you more clarity on where you want to go with this?
May I ask a question of Commissioner Stevens?
Sure.
Commissioner Stevens, I really respect your input on this. Could you just, if you wouldn't mind, just state, is it only just the objection from the city of the town of Johnstown, or what other objections you have? I'm trying to understand your objections and take that into account with my deliberation.
I mean, that is one of, I guess we're not really required to consider that. but I think it goes, I think that some of the things that Johnstown pointed out, which is the fact that we don't allow new billboards in our community. And so, I mean, I definitely understand that there is a benefit of getting rid of some of these billboards. I mean, I think decluttering is great. I wish that there were conversations with the city to understand, where they're coming from more, because it's hard to make a sign code and then have somebody say, that's, I mean, we go to referral agencies for a reason, because we want to have their input. And so I think that, the intention is to consider that input as we make a decision. I mean, this sign, it's not just one appeal. There are numerous appeals here of, the area of the sign and the change, the every 60 seconds versus 90 seconds, and the fact that it's all electronic versus partially electronic. And so, I mean, we are appealing, not just one section of our code that, as you said, we worked really hard on, but multiple sections. And so especially when a municipality says, hold up, look at your sign code because we don't feel like this meets it. I mean, I think that there's something to that. And, so, I don't know the idea that they're approving other signs. We didn't hear that from them. All we can go on is the letter that they gave us. And so that's where I'm coming from. But I do, I mean, there is a piece of me that does see the value of removing, signs. I mean, I think that, removing 24 or 25 signs is great. It's not necessarily great for the people that are affected by the new sign. I think it's good for the community, but I don't know. There's signs that have been there a long time. I don't know how. I mean, besides clutter and the aesthetics, what that they're doing so much harm, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
And
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens.
yeah, just one more request for clarification regarding the going from 2 signs to 1 on the site, on the location. Are the signs that would be removed, are they EMD signs or the regular billboards? They're regular billboards.
That's correct. They're just regular billboards, not similar to the EMD sign being proposed.
Okay, but we are going from 2 to 1.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. That's all.
If I might, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Stevens, are there any of the other appeal standards that maybe you would feel better about if the applicant's willing to change one of those?
I mean, I guess, I mean, the timing, I think, is problematic of like the every 90 second, our code required every 90 seconds versus every 60 seconds. And I think that was because of distraction purposes. I think that the size of the sign is quite large. And I don't think there'd be any way to get it down to the size that would be acceptable to Johnstown, but I think certainly trying to reduce the size of the sign might be beneficial.
And you're also interested in the timing?
Yeah, I just think that the kind of timing is, I mean, it's distracting. There's a reason we picked the 90 seconds. I think we looked at other communities. I mean, and maybe Rebecca or somebody who remembers why we chose 90 seconds was, I think we looked at other communities of what was acceptable to them, and then we kind of met in the middle of that. I don't remember exactly. It's been a minute since we looked at our sign codes.
I know we're in deliberation, Mr. Chair, but can I just ask if, I don't know how this works, if I offer changing the timing or the one of those that would make Commissioner Stevens feel, because I do have concerns about the size and the timing as well. So I'm just curious how that might be handled, if we want to discuss that.
So I'll refer to staff regarding the timing, the 90 seconds, which is in the code, and the 60 seconds that's being recommended. Didn't CDOT approve the different intervals? Could you speak to that?
The comments we received from CDOT were just that the applicant is required to go through that outdoor advertising permit application. They didn't give any responses or any other comments to any of the appeals or anything like that, or any of what the applicant was proposing.
So they didn't necessarily sign off on that? It would be
didn't
part
say
of their
yes,
outdoor
yeah.
advertisement permit?
They said, please have the applicant follow this. They provided a link and then said, hey, here's the link to the information needed for the outdoor advertising permit application.
So could CDOT deny the outdoor advertisement application if it's still 60 seconds rather than 90?
I'm not familiar enough with CDOT's, I mean, they could not deny an application, but what criteria they use, I'm not familiar with.
So if we went from 90 seconds or 60 seconds to 90 seconds, would that help the team here at all? With the
I mean, that
Commissioner
would help,
Stevens?
but, I would like to see if we could reduce the size of the sign, too. I don't know what the sort of typical, is this larger than the other electronic signs that are on I-25?
Yeah, that was a question I had. There are some on there. I don't know how this compares to that. I think at this point it would be appropriate to ask Mr. Cecil to come up and maybe you could speak to that, because we know that there are some of these signs up there now, and also your thoughts on changing the request in terms of the interval, the timing, and I don't know, around the square footage. Please, sir.
Thank you. In regards to the dwell time, the time that the ad is presented and then transitioned.
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
Sorry.
That's okay.
In regards to the dwell time, CDOT's dwell time, and there's been a lot of studies, CDOT's dwell time is 4 seconds. Lamar typically is around 8 seconds, and we're proposing much greater than CDOT and Lamar's typical standards of 60 seconds. The miles per hour on the interstate right there are 75 miles per hour, so you're only seeing one every 6 seconds or so. And so the transition every 60 seconds from one campaign or emergency message to another, we feel 60 seconds was good. The total square footage of the sign, the average on an interstate, because it travels so fast, so you need to be able to read it, is typically 14 by 48. So one side of the sign is typically 672 square feet. And we do have digitals that are 14 by 48 throughout Colorado on the interstate. And the proposed sign is 10.6 by 36 in Larimer County. So it's much smaller than our typical sign on an interstate.
Thank you. Go back to staff for a moment. When we established the 90-second interval, I know Commissioner Stevens alluded to this. We looked at other communities. Could someone remind us again some of the logic of 90-second time frame?
Yes, I'm happy to chime in. I wasn't here when the most recent sign code was adopted, but I have been involved in sign code rewrites before and some of the logic behind it. That transition time or dwell time is primarily related to driver distraction and traffic safety. And as Mr. Cecil said, it is a function of the speeds along the roadways where the signs are, and whether there are intersections there. So often you'll maybe parked at an intersection controlled by a stoplight and see a sign change over multiple times, in 60 seconds may not be a long enough time to avoid those transitions and those distractions. Whereas on an interstate with faster speeds, unless you're stopped in a traffic jam, there are far more drivers that will see a static message than will see a transition. 90 seconds further reduces the amount of transition time. And so the difference between 60 and 90 seconds from I'm not a traffic safety expert. I can't quantify kind of what that difference is from a safety perspective. But in general, we just don't want to see dwell times on I-25 or any busy road that are happening every few seconds and causing people to want to look at the sign and see what the new message is going to be as it's changing or catching their attention out of the corner of their eye. So from staff's perspective, 60 versus 90 seconds on I-25 was not a significant difference in dwell time. But in other parts of the community, it could be considered more significant. I can't speak for Lamar and, what they stand to gain from, additional advertising and 60-second intervals versus 90-second intervals, but I imagine there's a benefit to them there.
Thank you. So, good discussion. I'm still in a place where to support this with the updated conditions of approval. I don't know if my colleagues have any other additional deliberation, but I think we need to move forward. Commissioner Shadrack McNally, any further thoughts, please?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Stevens, I appreciate your time and your willingness to kind of deliberate this a little further. And I appreciate Commissioner Stevens answering my question. I just really wanted to understand a little bit more deeply your concerns, because I do have a little bit of the same heartburn that you have. And I do really care about our partners in the town of Johnstown and know that this is important to listen to their concerns. With that being said, I do also feel that staff have, they know how hard we worked on these sign codes, and I certainly hope they hear clearly from me. We have those sign codes there for a reason, and I really hope we're not going to continue to see lots of applications that are trying to keep coming through and trying to peel that, because we worked on those very hard and they're for a reason. With that being said, since we're reducing on that lot from 2 to 1, and we have the other 48, 24, sorry, I don't know why I keep thinking 48. That would be great to have 48 signs that will come down, and we have these extra conditions in front of us on the page. I'm still not 100% ecstatic about this approval, but I do think the community benefit, and I do feel staff have been trying to be very diligent about this. So I will be not more than happy. I will go ahead and make that motion because I still have some concerns about it. And I understand and respect Commissioner Stevens, where you're coming from. And I do hope you know that I share those same concerns. And I appreciate, again, your willingness to deliberate with me today. So, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I will go ahead and make that motion.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, sir. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Cecil sign appeal, file number 24-GNRL0553, subject to the conditions that appear on the screen that staff have revised in our meeting today that are presented to us. Does that cover that? And those following conditions.
Thank you. I believe that is a proper motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
That motion passes 2 to 1. I believe we've concluded our work for this afternoon. We are adjourned at 5:35 p.m. Thank you all.